Hi, I just wanted to hop on to have a quick little chat about something within photography that has kind of been bothering me a little bit recently. And it is kind of listening too much to these rules. Rules around composition, guidelines that we think if we follow them will mean we'll take interesting photos. And actually, I kind of want to encourage you to actively go against these rules or guidelines to help you create more interesting photos. So whether you are brand new to street photography or you are a seasoned veteran who's been shooting for decades, I think you're going to find what I have to say in this video quite useful. And I noticed just the other day, only a small percentage of you watching my channel are actually subscribed. So if you want to see more videos like this one, remember to hit the subscribe button and like this video to share it with more people interested in street photography. Before we jump into this video, I want to show you a few of the tools I've been using to put this together. And these are from this video's sponsor, SmallRig, who have their spring sale running from March 10th to March 16th, where you can save up to 40% when you use the links in the description below. For a lot of the B-roll in this video, I've been shooting on the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, which I've been using reliably for 2 years now. One issue with the Pocket 3 has always been the over-sharpness of the image quality, which can feel out of place alongside video from a dedicated full-frame camera. So this 1/4 strength SmallRig Black Pro Mist filter makes a big difference, softening the image and blooming the highlights to sell that effect of a larger sensor camera even when only using a 1-inch type sensor. This filter is part of a larger 4 filter set, including the 1/4 strength Black Pro Mist, a circular polarizer, a light pollution reduction filter, and a variable ND filter, which is particularly interesting. And yes, you can stack the Pro Mist with other filters, like the variable ND. If you haven't used a circular polarizer filter before, these filters are designed to reduce glare in your images and videos. You can make an overly reflective surface like this look much more clear by removing the glare. The light pollution reduction filter does exactly what it says on the tin. These are particularly effective when you're shooting in city environments, particularly in low light scenarios. This clears up those muddy nighttime scenes caused by some street lights to give your footage a more natural look as your eye sees it in lower light. And of course, the variable ND filter is like any other variable ND filter. This works like sunglasses for your camera. You can keep your shutter and ISO the same to maintain the best image quality, then control the exposure using the variable ND filter. And while the Pocket 3 is great for handheld shooting, I think it's best suited when the camera is stationary on a tripod like this. This little SmallRig VT15 vlog tripod has a lot more to offer than you might think. It can be a tabletop tripod with adjustable heights from 203mm up to 410mm, or it can mount onto a fence, bench, or anything else you can think of using this little hook on one of the tripod legs. You can use this as a standard tripod or as a vlogging camera grip, giving you and your camera more distance when hand-holding. But one of my favorite tricks on this tripod is this carabiner style clip, which means you can clip it onto your bag and save internal space. It also features a cold shoe mount for attaching a light, microphone, or wireless receiver. If you require something a little bit more rugged for your filmmaking, you can also pick up this suction cup mount from SmallRig. Sadly, I don't have a car here in Korea, but as you can see from this example, this gives you a lot of options in attaching action cameras and vlog cameras like the Pocket 3 to car windows or any other glass you can find. You can save up to 40% on everything I've mentioned in this video as part of SmallRig's spring sale, which runs from March 10th to March 16th. So if you want to level up your travel video kit with a Pocket 3 or similar cameras, check out the links below. So the first thing I want to talk about here when it comes to kind of forgetting about rules like the rule of thirds is going to be light. Of course, photography is nothing without light, and I think understanding light is one of the most important things we can do as a photographer, because the quality of the light and the direction of the light and the intensity of the light can make a big difference to the overall feeling, mood, and style of your images. Now, a very harsh pocket of light with high contrast between the highlights and shadows can mean for interesting shots where you can isolate subjects, and sometimes this can lean much more into a black and white editing style. And you might find little pockets of light that can highlight a subject and create negative space around them. Whereas if you were to use this quality of light in a wide open space, This can be an interesting way to create nice textured side lighting or backlit silhouettes, depending on the angle of the sun or light source relative to your subject and you with your camera. Likewise, if the light that we have is overcast and flat, this can actually give us other advantages, because we're not going to have to worry about losing details on our subject to harsh shadows with bright highlights. Instead, we can have a nice evenly lit subject and an evenly lit scene. And this can actually mean that you see more in your wider shot. So it can mean that you can position multiple subjects in different places while still having a nice amount of detail across the board. However, this doesn't mean that using light as a character in your shots can be more difficult. Because if you've ever gone chasing good light around golden hour in a city before, you know you end up trying to find those alleys and side streets that have the right angle of light. And light can kind of become the focus or the character of your shots, which can be a good thing. But at the same time, it's important to know how to use flat lighting to your advantage as well. Especially if you've grown up in the north of England like I have, flat lighting is what you see most of the time. So it's nice to be able to lean into that and be able to use it on the grey days, as well as when you have gorgeous light on a nice sunny day. A well-lit subject is one thing, but it's even nicer when we have multiple well-lit subjects actually structured in layers. So what do I mean by this? If we have one well-lit subject in the center of our frame, that can be an interesting hero shot, and there are definitely times and places for images like that. But if we have some very nice light with an interesting, even beautiful background, it can be nice to layer a subject in the foreground that also adds some depth to the scene and also complements it to give us some more context of where we are, when we are, and what was happening that day. When we have layers in our images, we can actually add multiple worlds together. We can have completely contrasting people with the environment, or completely contrasting actions, or even complementary actions happening in the foreground, midground, and background of our frame. Now, you might be thinking, aren't layers kind of like a rule or a guideline or something like that? And I don't think layers can really be structured so perfectly, because you can look at a lot of very interesting street photography where the layers feel chaotic, and you might notice one small thing in the foreground, quite a large subject or scene in the midground, and then lots of little details in the background. I think of work from people like Billy D, for example, who I think does a fantastic job of these sort of images, where it's like a very wide scene and we have lots of little things happening from the foreground all the way to the background that can be kind of dotted around. While we can layer subjects in lots of different ways, one of my favourite ways to layer subjects that I think makes for interesting compositions beyond rules is using colour. And by using colour, I don't mean using every colour in the world, I mean using the colours you have available. For me, I'm very naturally drawn towards a yellow and blue contrast or a complementary colour scheme. I like the way that yellow can pop against blue or vice versa. But equally, if I see a scene that's rich in greens, I'll work with the greens, or reds, I'll work with the reds. But I think there's a bit of a misconception when it comes to colour in photography, and that is trying to use every colour in the rainbow in one shot. So if you see a very colourful, wide scene with purples, blues, greens, yellows, reds, oranges all in one place, that can actually lead to quite a muddy overall shot, unless handled really carefully. Actually, for making more colourful photography, you want to subtract all of the unnecessary colour to make a certain colour combination work. Whether it's one bold colour scheme throughout one image, or whether it's 2 or 3 complementary colours playing with each other in a shot. The final point I want to talk about that kind of gets us away from thinking about these compositional rules or techniques is just to go in search of life. This is something that has rung true throughout the years of doing street photography for everyone. And this can be quite a liberating feeling. And once you actually put yourself in these situations, you realize how little these rules you heard from someone on the internet really mattered at the end of the day. Once you put yourself somewhere maybe outside of your hometown, or maybe at a busy event in your hometown, and you just stimulate your senses as a photographer, and you surround yourself with people doing things, composition kind of goes out the window. You start to notice the color, you start to notice the layers, you start to notice the lighting, and you start to notice the action, and literally just the humanity. I think we can go out on the street on a quiet grey day and be trying to line things up with grids in our minds and leading lines and the golden ratio. And none of these things will help you connect to the world around you. And I think the best way to make interesting street photos is to try and connect to the world around you. If you put yourself in an interesting scene, this could be a market in your local town. For me right now, I'm in another country, very far from where I grew up. So going to interesting markets here is a nice way to sort of reconnect with this aspect of photography. But I've done this in the UK as well. Going to markets in Manchester, going to different events in the city, going to the Barbican in London, for example, on a nice sunny day when Brits go mad. You can find interesting things happening that just ignite your ability to spot interesting images. It can be difficult if you are out every single day trying to notice beauty in the ordinary, as we often do as street photographers. But those days can become quite long and difficult. And then you start filling your mind with how to make a more interesting composition of one person on a grey day on an empty street. It can be quite tough. But I think if you put yourself in a crowded area with people doing things, you're going to notice pops of colour. You're going to notice steam off of a food stall. You're going to notice dogs in funny bags. You're going to notice little colour contrast in the sky against pops of yellow. You're going to notice nice layers of people doing things. And yes, sometimes this can mean that you go out of your way to somewhere interesting. You can go to a free event near where you live, and you're going to find more interesting shots that don't require you to be constantly trying to impose some sort of compositional rule or technique on your images to deem whether or not they are good enough. Because the content is what matters. And street photography is all about the content. It's not something that's going to be judged by someone who draws lines across it and annotates the direction of light to tell you why it's good. It's not a checkbox exercise. You want to get out and just make images and try and use everything I've talked about in this video. Whether it's the strength of the light or the flatness of the light, use either to your advantage. Or whether it's creating layers, whether it's 2 layers, a foreground subject and a background subject, or multiple layers sprinkled from the foreground, the midground, and the background. And then try and incorporate some colour. Rather than trying to get all the colours under the rainbow, just go for 1 or 2 colours that really stand out in the scene. And if some of or all of these things can come together in a handful of images, you can really find something that re-motivates you to get out and shoot and make beautiful yet engaging photos. And my light is about to go. It's about to get quite dull in here, so I'm going to wrap up this video now. Thank you very, very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please let me know by commenting down below. I was planning to do a little bit more POV stuff soon, so comment down below if you're interested in seeing that. It's been nice to get to see Seoul. It's starting to warm up a little bit. Sometimes it's freezing in the morning and then boiling in the afternoon. But going around the markets the last couple of days has been really, really fun. And enjoying shooting with a different camera. But that's a video for another time. If you want to see another video similar to this one, go watch this one I made in Venice a couple of weeks ago. I think you'll enjoy it.